we do want to get into some meaty footy stuff. So let's put this pandemic on hold for a second and say, well, hold on. Isn't there usually a transfer window that opens up in June?
Yes.
Yes, there is. So let's talk about some of the transfers that may happen. We expect, based on the market crash of footy, that a lot of players will be sold for cheaper because if the leagues are canceled, clubs will have to make revenue, right? So they're going to have to, one, offload contracts, right? But also make money to pay for the rest of the team's contracts and facilities and whatnot. So we can expect probably that this will be a wild summer of transfers.
Yeah, with lots of loans because clubs can't afford players and
right, especially for the lower tiered ones, but for the top tier teams who have billionaire owners, this is probably the best time to invest and build a team.
Yeah, they can exploit this.
Right. So I'll start with this because right now this conversation a few months ago would have been, who knows where the teams would have been right now if there was no pandemic in terms of standings. But in terms of player value, we can assume that it would have probably maintained, if not increased, for most players going into the summer. Oh, plus the euro. Oh,
especially since there would have been a euro.
Since there would have been a
euro. So
prices
tend to go up.
Right. But now that'll be pushed back by a year. So we can actually talk about perhaps some more reasonably priced transfers as this market continues to be more and more and more expensive. You, as a Manchester United fan, have been rebuilding for many, many, many years now.
Right. Lots of different managers.
Yeah, with lots of different managers. I would love to hear your opinion, at least now, on Manchester United's summer war chest and spending how much money do you think for the players that you feel you need?
Well, obviously, I think we are going to struggle a little bit based on the TV revenue that doesn't come in. But being Manchester United and the brand that it is, we can probably exploit this situation like probably very few clubs can. Even I think Barcelona are having a little bit of financial trouble, but I digress. I think we can continue business as usual. We can continue trying to sign players, and seeing that the last few signings have done quite well. I think that there is a plan in place for the type of players we're trying to look for and the amount of prices that we're willing to pay or not. My issue with United is that they always take too long trying to negotiate a deal, whereas in the end they immediately just end up paying what the original asking price was for, right? So you haggle for 8 weeks about trying to pay, trying not to pay 80 million for Harry Maguire, but then you end up actually doing it.
Then you end up at the end of the window needing him and being and now the other club has the leverage, right?
Exactly. So the amount of time we take might not be helpful, considering we don't know how long this transfer window is going to be. Maybe it's only a month, like the January transfer window tends to be. But I do think we can afford players. And if it will still open
in June,
right?
And when those players will be allowed to start playing, right? Maybe it'll only be at the end of their season. So maybe the League One transfer window or the Ligue 1 rather transfer window is already open.
Right.
Right. Technically, I mean, it probably won't come into effect until June, but at least we know the players aren't going to be playing again until at the earliest August.
Exactly. And I think, having said that, I think we can still pay enough money. I think we can probably afford to pay that money and still be successful and still maintain, financially successful. I think what we're going to have trouble doing is offloading players like we always do. Our wage structure has been messed up for years.
Nobody wants them.
Exactly. And they're severely overpaid, and now that has been decreased a little bit, but it's a one by one step. We saw Ander Herrera going because, he was asking for a lot of money, but it's having someone in the dressing room like Alexis Sanchez who does nothing gets paid, 500, 400k a week. And then Ander Herrera comes in, who's one of the most integral players of the midfield back then, coming and asking for more money. You can see where he's coming from, but thankfully the club didn't overpay and we just decided to offload him. And that's going to need to happen a lot more. But it's a very slow progress situation because not a lot of clubs want to overpay for the players that we have. It's people like Smalling, Jones, Rojo that need to be sold and have needed to be sold for the last 2 or 3 years. But we couldn't do it because we couldn't offload them. Right. So I think that's going to be where our challenge is, as it always is.
This might be the summer of small clubs who have a lot to offer in terms of players getting paid, undervalued, amounts for their players because the top tier clubs know that they can underbid, and it's like, dude, take it or leave it, but I know you need the cash.
You need the money, yeah.
So the leverage is with the big teams. However, as you said, offloading players who are on a lot of money, this might be an opportunity for small clubs to pick up some big names too
Exactly.
on very cheap transfers, because maybe the top clubs just want to clear them off the wage bill
Exactly.
and try to
Yeah.
move forward, right?
And with someone like the wage bill of Man United, I mean, it's huge. I don't know what the exact number is, but it is pretty big. And we've taken steps to offload some of those people, like Ashley Young, not really Sanchez for the time being. Like, we cleared off a percentage of it. But now we have to face that issue when he comes back. But we cleared off Lukaku, who was making a lot of money. We even, like, Bruno Fernandes was brought in, and with the amount of money we were paying Ashley Young, we could pay someone like Bruno Fernandes who can actually benefit our team. So it's going in the right direction. Chris Smalling was on loan. I believe Phil Jones took a 25% wage cut because we didn't make the Champions League. So there's a lot of that going on, and we're going to need to keep doing it. But as I said, it's going to be a slow process, and we kind of just need to be patient with it. But I do think we can exploit the market in terms of players coming in.
Yeah, well, with that being said, let's get around to some names that you want to bring in. Now, we'll start with this. They're the obvious names, and I
Right.
would like for you to drop them just because they're the obvious players who United and most clubs, quite frankly, who are trying to compete would like to sign. Start with them, and then let's go into more realistic signings, because maybe if you're a club like Dortmund who's hurting a little bit, but you don't want to offload a player when you know within the next calendar year you can get an extra 40 mil for him.
Exactly.
Maybe you might be a little
Yeah.
more, tentative to sell someone like that, because if you think long term it might not be in your best interest. Please give us some of the names who might make Man United great again.
Right. So for me, Man United have three main issues, and we're going to touch up on all of them. So the first issue, we've been lacking a right winger for, I would say, 2 or 3 years. Since we moved Valencia back to right back, we've been kind of struggling to find someone to replace him. We've played Juan Mata on the right, and that's not really the best option because you need someone who's pacey and can hug the touchline, similar to what Rashford's been doing on the left. And if you don't do that, your team's kind of shifted and it's really unbalanced. So the obvious fix, the name on everyone's tongue is Jadon Sancho. He's the most wanted young player in the world right now, other than Erling Haaland.
One of our own.
Yeah, one of your own, because you pissed him off and now he doesn't want to come back to you guys. So,
Yo, that's annoying. Let's just touch on that for a second here. The way that City might as well not have an academy, right? Because you just produce unreal players. I mean, mind you, I say that, but we have the greatest young player in the history of all time, young Phil Foden, the best.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah.
One of our own. But it's one thing it's hard for top tier clubs to integrate talent when you're trying to compete everywhere, because it's one thing like if Liverpool are going from a club who's kind of not really competing for anything and can integrate the players at that youth system level and then propel them forward, whereas if you're already competing for everything, to then give an opportunity to, at the time, 17-year-old Jadon Sancho, when you have somebody like Sterling, who's already more proven, and so on and so forth in the past few years, where you're like, listen, dude, I can't guarantee you much playing time right now because we have to be competing. So if you're not very good right now, then it's gonna harm the club more than anything.
Right.
Which is why City have 19 clubs that they also own, right? Like the City network. However, like we were talking about the other day, it's not always the same playing in a different country, especially if it's outside of Europe's top 5 leagues, right?
Exactly.
So a club like City, and we'll touch on City a little later, who are producing. If you look at some great academy prospects,
right,
who they're just letting go.
You're looking at City, Chelsea, and United being the top 3 talent producers in England, I think.
Right,
to be honest.
and United have a history of integration, and at least are not really competing right now, so they have more opportunity to bring in those players. But for a club like City, they're just like, listen, I don't have the faith in you yet. And with Pep being how he is, he still thinks he has the best hands for developing young talent. Which he's probably right in terms of teaching them things.
But he doesn't do it.
But they it's not just that. It's that he doesn't then give them the opportunity to prove that they know it, right?
Exactly.
Except for at the U23 level, which
is kind of useless to me, honestly. The U23 is very useless, but yeah.
But go on.
But which is fair. Like, he opened the door, like Jadon opened the door for young talent to go abroad and try to, because the thing that you need the most when you're 17, 18 is just minutes. You need minutes somewhere. You need to play against men who are trying to compete for something, which is why the under-23s isn't a great league, because you have nothing to lose and you have nothing to win. So playing against actual men that are competing for something does a world of wonders for young players, and that's to be fair to him, that's why he did, and why he's been so successful.
Do you think young players are too good nowadays? Because I think they're too good.
Yeah.
Like, you have some really good, like,
Exactly.
18 to 21-year-olds
Yep.
who are just, like, redefining the sport almost, where it's like, hold on, how are you
The
not
average
necessarily a
age has gone
seasoned
down.
prospect, but the average, yeah, exactly. Like, usually it's like, okay, he's 24, he's a young player who's unreal. Now he's like 19 and unreal. And you have guys who are in their prime, their physical and athletic prime, being in their mid-20s, being looked at the back age of their career,
Mhm.
because you could have somebody like Jadon Sancho who's 20 contributing to 30 goals in, less competitions from, in a league that's respected. I don't know, man. I'm a little upset that young players are so good nowadays.
Yeah, they're really good, and I think, I mean, credit goes to all the coaches at those clubs, City, Chelsea, and United, for generating those talent, and not always do they break into the first team where the academy is, but they always generate enough talent for other teams, and it really is bringing the average age of the league down, because everyone's faster now and more skillful and very technical. It used to only be, oh, this kid's really quick, just give him time to build some muscle and be a little bit more athletic. But now they do that, but they already have the technical ability, like someone like Phil Foden.
Right.
So yeah, people they are I think getting a lot better, which is good to see for the sport at least.
Absolutely.
And hopefully that's always the progression that it goes. It can only get better from here.
Yeah. Soon enough, we'll have 14-year-olds tearing it up,
Yeah.
and we'll be like,
Chola Shorta,
Stop.
I remember the name. He's
Yeah.
in the academy. He's 16 now. Yeah, so going back to transfers, I think Jadon is number one name on everyone's tongue, and I think he would cost in excess of 100 million. Dortmund are known to be a selling club. They didn't sell anyone last year, so they're in need to sell, so they can buy some more players, right? That's kind of their whole business model, and to be fair, it works for them.
do you think that they might be more tempted to sell like their top prospect, one of two, 1A and 1B this season? Haaland, obviously, we don't think will go anywhere yet because he's only been there for 6 months. But for Sancho, do you think it's likely that Dortmund will be like, it's gonna this pandemic will force their hand and they'll have to sell Sancho for
I
like
believe so.
70, 80 mil as opposed to 120, which they would have got a couple months ago?
To be honest, I think they're only going to sell him to certain clubs that can afford the 100 plus. I don't think they go less than 100. To be honest, I kind of feel like those clubs that they're looking to sell to are going to be able to afford it. You're thinking of your Cities, your Uniteds, even Real Madrid to an extent.
Even your Chelsea's, right? Because
Yeah,
they were
Chelsea
banned.
as well.
They haven't been able to to spend any money for
They
the
have
past
money
few
in
years.
the bank, so I think they'd be able to get the money that they want for him. Especially someone who is such a hot commodity right now. I think clubs would be willing to pay for him as well, regardless of the price tag being higher than what they would really like to pay for him. But yeah, I think he's number one on the list. Obviously, there's also Jack Grealish and Moussa Dembele we've been linked to them a lot, and I do like those players. I would like to see them coming. I think they're more kind of realistic and achievable, because I don't see a lot of teams going in for them. I think Moussa Dembele you might have to fight a few teams for, but I think they're way more achievable. But going off the number that the obvious targets and the ones that people can't stop talking about, I like a few players. I think if we can't get a striker that is the number 1 or 2 on Solskjaer's list, I don't see the value in spending close to 40 or 50 million to buy his plan B striker who isn't going to work out, because we've done that for the last 6-7 years. And then we end up, struggling to sell him and
Right.
not knowing who to sell him to, and he doesn't work out, and then we have to. It's a whole new process, and and doesn't end up scoring a lot of goals. So I think trying to secure a permanent deal for someone like Odion Igalo, who really people laughed at him when we were linked to him in the January transfer window for a loan.
Because you were
But it
so
was-
desperate for a striker that you're like,
Exactly.
dude, we'll take the Watford
we'll take
guy.
exactly
you
the
know,
guy
who plays
who's
in
been
China
in China.
now. Yeah.
So, not to disrespect the Chinese league, but it's obviously less.
Right.
It's not as good as some of the European leagues. So we were so desperate, we didn't have anyone. You were looking at kind of Jesse Lingard leading the line, and that's not good at all. So, and to be fair to him, he came in. He's had 4 goals in 8 appearances, and I think that's better than anything you can ask for him. At least he is an option that you can look to on the bench, and he'll be happy to sit on the bench. It's his dream club. He kind of speaks like he's one of us. And you really believe it. So many players come in and say, "Oh, it's been my dream to play for United," but you can really sense that in his
Right.
voice, and he'd be more than happy to sit on the bench, and he took a massive wage cut to come here. And
Right.
I think you can kind of go by another year having him on the bench, and then trying to go between him, Martial, and someone like Mason Greenwood, who can learn off Igalo, who's been really good at holding the ball. Even if he's not scoring, he's bringing in other players into the team play, and I think we could do much worse than bring him in for the cheap price that he would be valued at.
Now, I guess the final question for this week on United is, obviously Solskjaer had a really good spell, then a really bad spell, and now kind of an okay spell. Are you still under the impression that he's the long-term manager? Because I think if you are planning this rebuild, you kind of have to commit to a manager first. Because if you bring in another manager who, let's say, has no use for most clubs will have a use for someone like Jadon Sancho. But I mean, if you're going to bring in somebody who might be a more seasoned manager who doesn't necessarily have the same playing style, then buying the players for Solskjaer's playing style might be, another waste of money and set you back a few more years again.
Yeah, it's a genuine concern, but I think while I don't think he's the man to take us to a Premier League, I don't think that will happen. I think he's going to be the man to kind of steady the ship, and he's already done way more than enough in doing that, changing the culture around the club. It got really, really sour, as you know, under Mourinho, and even in Solskjaer's worst times, I don't think it got that bad in terms of the club atmosphere, and he's really changed the culture of the spending, right? Because we used to spend for the biggest names, and now you see United try to and not spend as much money as we used to, and try to pick and be smarter with the picks for the transfer window. And I think it really is going somewhere. So if he isn't the guy to take us to leagues or trophies, I think he is the guy who's gonna leave it in a much better state for the next guy. And to be honest, when people say that he was doing garbage, this has been the worst United team for the last 30 years, right?
Right.
I don't think
Statistically,
anyone
right,
comes
but
in.
by the points.
Statistically, squad-wise, it was a thinner squad. I don't think anyone comes in and does much better than we are. I think we started the season really struggling to break into the top 10, and now we're 3 points away from Champions League football. I think he's done really well with the tools that he's been given. I see a style that he wants to play. I see kind of at least a philosophy about him that fits with the model of the club. And if nothing else, he's going to leave it in a much better place for the next side, come in and push us to be champions or at least win a few trophies here and there.
What about Pogba? Like we were talking about earlier, offloading some big names. Do you think that he's one of the names you have to offload? And if so, how much do you think you could realistically get for him in the climate now ahead of this window?
Pogba's 26, 27, and obviously I think the club values him in 100 million plus player. I don't think people are willing to pay that much, especially as we talked about the COVID scenario and everything. I don't think clubs even have the money to pay for him, and you kind of look at him going, you say, yeah, Pogba's definitely going to go, but then you're like, where to?
Right.
No one can
Who
afford
can
him.
afford him. Right.
And to be honest, I don't think people need him that much.
I think the best you could hope for with Pogba, if you're desperately trying to offload him, is a swap deal where someone will have to give you a good. I mean, to be honest, Pogba's kind of like, really, he's become pretty underrated, right?
Yeah.
Like people have really, he was really overrated for a while, but now everybody, craps on him. And I don't think he's as bad as people give him credit for.
He's still in form. He's one of the best midfielders in Europe.
He just loses focus a lot. And if he's playing under someone who consistently is giving him, it integrates him into the team properly and doesn't expect everything of him, but just like, dude, kind of do your thing. Almost like he was at Juve, right? Where it's like, dude, we're surrounding you by better midfielders. Just do you. Have your flair, your dribbles. Just concentrate and don't mess up short passes, right? I think that's all they're really expecting for him. Do you think you could get a swap for him to a top-tier club? Because someone like him isn't going to anybody who isn't competing, I don't think. Right? Like, I don't think you can offer Pogba to a team like Dortmund and be we'll give you Pogba plus money for Sancho. I think they'd be like, no way. But like Pogba would be like, I'm not going to Dortmund.
Yeah, you're looking at, I don't even think PSG are in the conversation. I think you're looking at Juve, Barca, and Madrid, right? I don't think we're going to give him to anywhere else in England.
And if it is PSG,
kind of
then they're probably going to send you some money, but not. I mean, there's nobody who they could really send you alternatively.
They're not going to give us their best players, and those are the players we kind of really want.
Right.
So I wouldn't swap him with any of the midfielders that I can get from some of the bigger teams, because the midfielders that they would be willing to swap are not the ones that we want. and neither are the players in any of the positions, right? You like the names I just listed. And I don't even think he'd accept a move to Atletico Madrid. I think because we were talking about it. You have Thomas Partey and Sal Niguez. I would love either of those guys. Like, I'll take the one you don't want, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would love either of those guys in the team. I think they make a much more balanced midfield, but I don't think he's going to accept a move to Atletico Madrid.
Right.
So I don't think a swap
even
is
though they've played in
possible.
more Champions Leagues than he has as of late, right?
Exactly. And I think he realizes that. I think he realizes that for the first time since he's been at the club, he doesn't have bargaining power anymore. Right? I think you're kind of in the situation where you go, we'll sell you if we get the money that we think you're worth, or you sign a new contract. I think those are his only two options.
Right.
Because I don't think we're sending him on loan to anywhere.
Play out your contract.
Exactly.
Right?
And then move anywhere you want.
Mm-hmm.
And then see where you go. But those are really the options. And I think I would love to keep him just to see how him and Bruno fit into a team. I think that would be great. If you have someone who's really really good CDM.
Yeah.
I
think if like Solskjaer just came out and backed Pogba and was like assuming the league comes back and everything, and it's like, yo, trust me, he's gonna work with some midfield partners now who can cover him defensively and help him out offensively.
And if I'm Pogba, I'm looking at this guy and I'm like, damn, we got a really good player here. So like, I want to play with him. For the first time, I see someone who's close to my level that I can kind of play with and play off and have chemistry with. So I think it could go either way. I think it's a 50-50 for me. If you tell me if he's staying or going, I think it's a 50-50, and only Pogba really knows what he's going to do. And I would be honestly happy in either scenario. If he goes, I'm okay because the circus behind Paul Pogba goes away. He's only played 6 games this season, and people like Graham Souness can't shut up about him because of his name. Yeah, 6-7 games. That's it.
That's crazy. It still feels like he played more in the first
in all
couple
competitions,
months, right? But wow.
So it's only been 6-7 games, and people can't stop talking about him. So if we offload him and the circus goes away and we can kind of focus on everything, but without Paul Pogba, that would be great. If he stays and we're better off for it, then I'm okay with that too.
All right, cool. We'll end the show on City because City don't technically have a transfer ban, but it sure does feel that way, right? When you're at the level that City are, where they're competing for everything, and you take away Champions League football because they're banned from, for those who don't know, from Champions League for 2 seasons. It's almost like a deterrent. It's really a deterrent for all other top names that City can hope to attract, because you're taking away the possibility of winning Champions League, which is a huge factor when you're choosing to go to another team. Now City will probably win some kind of appeal with the International Arbitration of Sports,
or at least delay it.
Where they'll probably get, maybe they can reduce it to 1 year, where I don't think it'll affect as much, because especially when you move to England, you're not moving to England to guarantee Champions League football, because as we see, although there's a top 6, it changes a lot.
Yeah.
Right. At least throughout the year, maybe the top 4 end up being pretty similar most years, but I still think City are a premier destination if they have, even if they have a Champions League ban, because you're almost saying, okay, well, come win everything there is to win in England for a few seasons.
Exactly.
You can win up to 6 trophies in 2 years, which you could do a lot worse going to other teams. And then after that, we'll have you fully integrated into the squad, and we can go compete for Champions League.
Champions League,
having been more rested because it's less games that you play throughout the year.
Yeah, you can do what Chelsea did, and Chelsea a few years back didn't have Champions League. Because they finished 10th the year before, and they really benefited and ended up winning 30 games out of 38.
Right.
So you can really benefit from having a rest, and especially since you've had so many injured players this season. Like Sane, you had, Laporte, De Bruyne.
No kidding.
Giving them a week's rest before their next game, that's scary.
Yeah, it might break their own century on record.
Yeah, that's a little bit scary.
Now, it is a little disheartening, obviously, for any other City fans out there watching. For those who hate City, probably love it, right? Because you're like, yes, we eliminate that for now. Do you think City, assuming this year's Champions League resumes, and we'll do a breakdown of this afterwards, how much do you think they actually pose as a threat, still being up on Madrid right now, to leave the Champions League competition having won it? What do you think the likelihood of that is? Because that'd be hilarious.
Very likely.
That'd be so
last
funny.
year's champions, it would be hilarious.
It'd be just like flipping birds up.
All right,
screw you, UEFA. We'll see you in a couple of years.
Walking
Walking out as Back in Black plays as it explodes behind it.
Yeah, I mean, last year's champions are gone. Liverpool. And Barcelona don't look as strong as they always do. PSG, I mean, you can kind of go at PSG. They're notorious for bottling it.
Right, and we have the upper hand on on the big boys of the competition, you know,
Exactly.
in terms of Real Madrid, because you know now we're playing second leg at home if it eventually comes back.
Right. So there's a lot of big teams that seem to be going out of this competition this year. So your competition is mainly Juventus and PSG, and unless
Mhm.
there's a Cinderella story somewhere that we don't know about, but
Right.
it is very
Bayern-
likely
Bayern
that
are probably a big
yeah,
one,
Bayern
too.
as well. So it is very possible, and you can't overlook Man City as being one of the threats in the Champions League, and Pep Guardiola really wants to win a Champions League. It's been so long since he has won one, since he was in Barcelona, and that's the one thing that he needs to do with City to have won almost everything that you can win,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it is, you guys still are a big threat in the Champions League.
Yeah, I think so too, and I think without, I don't even want to talk about Leroy Sané, to be honest, because it's gonna hurt me physically. I think City could still be, as I mentioned, a good destination for no reason other than if they shifted their attention. Right now, they've been trying to win 4 trophies, not including Community Shield, right? But trying to win realistically everything there is to win in England,
Mm-hmm.
because Pep really values his trophies, right? So usually there's no upset
That's how
stories
you
with
judge
FA
as a
Cup and
manager,
stuff.
right?
Right, you're like, dude, I'm gonna win everything that there
Yeah.
is to win. You know, I think there are worse things in the world to deter players. Now, maybe you won't get your Mbappes and stuff, but that always seemed unlikely anyway. In terms of where City need to improve, maybe not having to play in the Champions League tells Phil Foden, yo, you're gonna play now as David Silva leaves because his
Step up.
contract's done. This is your, step in, right?
Right.
You're gonna fill that spot now. We don't, and then because City won't have the opportunity to sign someone who could fill that role, who isn't Phil, who's maybe had more minutes across Europe, right? We've seen Aouar, like Lyon have an unreal squad and have literally
Yeah.
said like, dude, we're gonna have to sell
Talent
a lot
factory.
of people.
Yeah.
And when you tell people that you're gonna have to sell a lot of people, you lose a lot of leverage.
Yeah.
Which means a lot of clubs can come in with
Probably drop 10 million in your asking price right there.
right, like good bids and say, okay, listen, bro, here's what we can offer you. Take it or
We
leave
know
it.
you need it.
And they
Yeah.
say, oh, damn, okay. And then they take it. Maybe City can still attract some top tier talent and win the Premier League, even if this one is cancelled or awarded to Liverpool.
Yeah, and since Pep came in, yeah, he signed a lot of players and spent a lot of money, but it's never been on, the best of the best talent in the world. It's been players for around 50 to 60 million, and then he grows them and they become it's more about the team chemistry than anything else, and you can really commend him for that rather than spending big cash on the biggest talent. So
Mhm.
I don't think it would affect you that much. The biggest problem is some talent leaving, and I'll let you touch up on that.
Yeah.
So someone like Kevin De Bruyne, who really like someone like him, needs to be fighting for the Champions League.
Yeah.
And I know you have thoughts on what you guys should do about him. So talk to us
Yeah.
about that.
I mean, this is it's bro. It's honestly hard to talk about this, right? Because
I can imagine.
I don't think that all the players are necessary. Like, it hurts. It really pisses me off because some players are like, yo, that's fine because we're still going to compete in England.
Right.
And that's the attention that I want to the squad. But when you have players who are saying, I don't know if I really want to be playing here then if we're not competing for Champions League, like, dude, screw you, man. Right? Because go to another club. Most other clubs don't have guaranteed Champions League football, right? There's a
Right.
few that do, right? You got your Bayerns, you got your Real Madrids, your winning teams in all the leagues, and City's usually one of that team, right? City hasn't missed Champions League in many years,
Yeah.
and now they're going to be potentially banned for an infraction on some stuff that whatever, right? Like things that don't relate to the players specifically in the squad. And they say, okay, maybe if you can reduce it to a 1-year ban, then I might think about it because, every club will miss Champions League,
Mm-hmm.
at least once. But if we have to deal with many players leaving, depending on the players, some players I'd be saying, okay, go then.
Go for it. Yeah.
I don't want you, right? If you're not invested here, then I don't want you here.
You're not good enough for me to care about.
Right. Like,
Yeah.
screw you, right? If anything, it'll open up some space in the squad and maybe we can build really good chemistry in the team because we don't have to worry about constantly changing the lineups, which we do almost every single
All the
game,
time.
right?
Super unpredictable.
Almost every game. However, when someone like Kevin De Bruyne, who's one of the top 5 best players in the world,
Right.
right, top 1-2 best players in the Premier League, says, listen, I might have to consider my future here. Hey, City, loan him.
Ugh.
Yeah, because it hurts, man.
Dagger to the heart.
It hurts a lot.
Yeah.
And I would like to believe that he has more faith to the project than that, right? Because when he came, City, I think we bought him when we were like 4th in the league.
Well, you bought him Pellegrini or someone. I
Right,
think
like,
Pellegrini
it
was still
was
there. It
low
was
in
before
the-
Pep came.
Right. So we were finishing like
And the only reason
fourth.
you finished fourth is because you
Pellegrini
announced Pep
Yeah,
was coming,
exactly.
and Pellegrini was
Pellegrini
like, "All right,
said,
well, why
right.
do I care?"
Screw it. Right. But that's what I mean, right? So now you're at the level where you're too big for the club. And I'll never tell Kev to piss off because, dude, like, we've seen what he can do and how he can take
Exactly,
control of a
yeah.
game. But if the ban is upheld and it's for 2 years, maybe we sell him because he's 27. You can probably get a lot of money for him at a non-pandemic time, right?
Mhm.
But I think the move would probably be, for me anyway, I'd like to see him loaned out for a season or two. Go compete
do
with
whatever
Real
you want,
Madrid.
yeah.
Go do whatever you want, right? But then you're coming back and you're going to help us win something.
Yeah.
Having played your Champions League, maybe he wins, maybe he doesn't. I guess it's just not common practice to loan out the best players in the world.
I don't think he would realistically say no to that. I think your main issue is convincing the club that he goes to that, oh, you're only getting him for 2 years, but so have your
But
success.
who wouldn't take that, right? Like, yo, I'm giving you a Kevin De Bruyne for 2 years.
Yeah, but
Okay.
then they probably want to keep
Thanks,
him, right?
bro.
You know?
Yeah, no option. But that's what I mean, right? Imagine the damage that any club could do, a Barcelona, a Real Madrid, with a Kevin De Bruyne in their team for
Mhm.
2 years.
Oh, could you imagine?
That's what I'm saying, right? Like, a lot of teams
Yeah.
could, he could help a lot of teams. And outside of England,
For sure.
screw you. No one in England is getting Kev.
Yeah, you can't
Right?
give him to anyone in England.
Right.
That would be detrimental and really stupid on
And
City's
really,
part if they
really
do that.
stupid. Yeah. So anyway, I think that's we'll see what happens there amidst the pandemic. We'll bring you more content like this as the weeks go by. Maybe we can see, whether or not leagues are progressed, that whether or not leagues are canceled, that can change things. If bans are upheld, if footy is delayed. There's so many variables right now that it's so hard
We
to.
don't really know what's going on. you
Yeah,
know?
all of this is just speculative.
Yeah.
And as the weeks go by, we'll continue to, hopefully bring you content just like this, but hopefully we can break down a little more footy as it comes back. If it doesn't, then we'll just bring you transfers and other type things like this.
Yeah, because if nothing else, reporters are really bored right now.
Yeah, if anything else, we can make up some transfer rumors. In the coming weeks, we'll have episodes with some familiar faces, maybe some new ones. Maybe we'll do Zoom interviews. We'll break down Newcastle's rebuild. We can talk more about valuations of players,
Harry Kane,
so on and so
next,
such. Yeah, Harry Kane's future. If he says, I don't want to stay at Tottenham just for the hell of it, I might know a club that can win you some trophies, Harry, But anyway, that's all in the weeks to come. For now, this has been, I guess, episode number 57 of the Jersey Wall, but the first one on Content Cube, the latest and greatest YouTube channel. We hope that you enjoyed this week's content. Mina, thanks as always.
Thanks for having
coming
me.
and chatting footy.
Yeah, hope you guys enjoyed it.
Hope you guys enjoyed this content, and we look forward to seeing you in the weeks that follow. Take care. See ya.